Hello, everyone. So my name is Nicole, and I'll be presenting on assessing social justice in Alabama using geographic information systems. Now, what is social justice? Now, several social, political, and economic discourse have been focused around equity or equal opportunities for everybody, especially in the distribution of wealth. So social justice may be broadly understood as the fair and compassionate distribution of the fruits of economic growth. Now, several social justice movements have developed in the 20th and then the 21st centuries, with everyone trying to have a socially just world. Now, so what is social justice? It's defined as the way in which human rights are manifested in the everyday lives of people at every level of society. So the basic ideology behind social justice is equity for all, irrespective of differences. However, according to Keller, she says social justice does not have a definite definition in our culture that we can all agree on, because the American society is divided upon like an appropriate definition for social justice. But for the purpose of our study, we define social justice to encompass the equal distribution of resources, opportunities, and privileges within a community, and then the fair administration of laws for all people, regardless of their differences, and also based on their needs. So the converse of that would be injustice. Now, typical minority communities are usually economically disadvantaged because of discrimination, a lack of resources, insufficient capital. And according to data from the census in 2010, it says that 6 out of the 10 counties with the highest levels of income inequality were found in the South. Also, extensive research that has been conducted on vulnerability indices in Alabama indicated that there are several major social, environmental, political, and economic inequalities, especially along the Black Belt. Now, the picture you see over there is Lowndes County that is facing a lot of sewage issues, and then there's so much depravity in most of these Black Belt counties. Now, Alabama, just like most states in the Deep South, is historically noted for its part in slavery, white supremacy, segregation, poverty, isolation. So in an attempt to understand the political, social, and then the economic structure of Alabama, it is very key to place it in that historical and theoretical framework. Now, with the state of Alabama, it is along the Black Belt region in the southern parts of the United States with a population of 4.8. Now, why do we term it the Black Belt? The Black Belt originally was known as for its fertile land, or the soil that was found along the south. But within time, it was used as a term to connote a place where most of the people were African American. Flora says every community, however rural, poor, has some resources within it or capital, and then an investment in these capital creates new capital. And what is capital? Capital is any entity which brings an advantage of any kind to the holder of that entity or that capital. So based on that, we came up with 7 types of capital, which are human, physical, environmental, social, cultural, financial, and then political capital. Now, according to the American Community Survey, Alabama is the 3rd poorest state. The unemployment rate is at 7.4, the median income is 46,000, and then the poverty rate per household is 17%. Now, amidst all of these, the research has shown that there are some key areas that are prone to inequality in the distribution of resources. So there's therefore the need for us to assess the distribution of resources by county, at county level, in order to aid policy analysts to determine key areas of inequality, and then so they can tackle that. So our major objectives were to develop a unique approach in assessing social justice in Alabama using capital as a major indicator, and also to develop a tool that will help community advocates and policymakers to identify strategic intervention areas and then help them to address socially related issues. So for our framework, for our methodology, we use the geographic information systems, and we use this because GIS has that unique feature of being able to map out, analyze, and then you're able to manage your data and then place it in a spatial element, or place in a spatial geographic mapping. And then we also decided to use the GIS because in recent times, several researchers have used GIS in developing vulnerability indices in several parts of the United States. So for our data sources, we got secondary data from these sources: the Census Bureau, the American Community Survey, the Geological Survey Service, Forestry, the Alabama Gazetteer, the Interior, and then Secretary of State's Alabama Statistics Department. So these are the various places we got our data from. Now, for our indicators, I talked about having 7 different forms of capital. So for our indicators, for the human capital, we looked at education and then the health. For education, we looked at high school graduation, college graduation. We looked at, for the health, we looked at people who have health insurance and the number of hospitals that were found in the communities or in the counties. For physical, we looked at roads, schools, airports, environmental, rivers, lakes, forests. And then for political capital, we looked at voter precincts, registered voters, cultural capital, the museums, the historic landmarks. For social capital, we looked at churches and then the civic organizations. And then for the financial, of course, we looked at banks and then credit union and how people are able to access funds. So for the methodology, in analyzing the data, we use the hotspot analysis tool. Now, the hotspot analysis tool, what it does is that when you compute in your figures, it creates hotspots and cold spots. So the parts that have the red dots over there, those are places that have hotspots of each capital. Because most of the variables had different units, we use the R software to convert most of them to percentile so they can have one unit. And then when we're done with that, we use the ArcMap to aggregate all the variables to create sub-indices. So each capital had a sub-index. And then afterwards, we grouped all the sub-indices together to create a social justice index. So these were the results that we got for the various capitals. So for cultural capitals, the places that have the burgundy colors are the places that had very high capital distribution for each capital. So these were the results we got for cultural and then environmental. And then these were the results we got for physical and then the human capital. I'll talk more about it in my conclusion. And then this was what we got for the political, financial, and then social capital. Now, for the major index, this was what we got. So the places that have the burgundy, those are the places that have very high distribution of all the capitals combined. Now, our results show that 2 out of the counties, that's Macon County, Russell County, had a very low distribution of capital. However, for the counties with very high capital, we found that Sumter, Green Hill, Choctaw, Marengo, Wilcox had very high social capital. Now, the social justice index that we developed can serve as a blueprint for community development analysts in developing or in determining the areas of concerns and then areas with very positive capital. So when you take that blueprint, that's the index. When you're going into a county, you know which capitals they have that are their strengths and which ones that are their weaknesses, so that you can know where best to channel your efforts to. Also, we, based on the results that we got, we determined that strategic, economic, and then community development approaches should be employed to promote equity in all of the areas. And also, major stakeholders should be educated regarding resources, because some of the stakeholders in there do not even know that some of these capitals exist in their counties. And also, we also want to advocate or recommend that more research needs to be done in identifying other key variables. So for, let's say, human capital, we can add more variables to it that would classify or be a composite of human capital and for the rest of the capitals as well. And in order to ascertain whether the results we're getting were really true to earth, I went over there to Greene County, and I'll talk about it if anyone wants to know more about it. Yeah, so based on that, I'd like to acknowledge my major advisor, my committee members, Tuskegee, the Alabama State statistician, she's been very good. And then the judges also, I'd like to appreciate you so much, and then my fellow colleagues. Thank you so much. And then these are my references. So thank you, and I welcome your questions.
So were your results in line with what you observed when you went to the county?
Yes. Now I'm going to use Greene County, which I went to, and I live in Macon County, so it is one of the places that has the very low capital distribution. Okay, so in Greene County, I got there, and then they have a lot of abandoned houses and abandoned buildings. So I asked, what is this? Oh, it used to be one person, and it was something historic. And I'm like, why is it surrounded by bush? You know, this house can actually be cleaned up, refurbished, and then it can serve as a form of historic, landmark. People can come there and learn the history of Greene County. They have a lot of these abandoned buildings around. And even in Tuskegee, we're having the same issue in Tuskegee, a lot of abandoned buildings. All these things can be, invested into to create some form of wealth for the communities, but then they are not doing that. So it really resonated when I went into the counties. Yeah, it really resonated with the results that we found. Yes, please.
So, given those results, what would be your impact in making it happen?
Okay. My personal impact is coming to a conference like this, where I know a lot of community development analysts will be around. I want to present